Hey you and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old new video, depending on when you're watching it I guess, I hope the future is better than the present. We're going to talk about the case of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. So settle down and grab your maple syrup as we head once again to the Great White North. Seriously, what is going on in Canada? I'm blaming Moosehead. Paul Bernardo and his wife Karla Homolka were soulmates, in the worst way possible, and were dubbed as Ken and Barbie due to their charming looks. Come on, a pair of hotties. Apparently and allegedly. But remember folks, looks aren't everything. Thankfully, otherwise I'd be screwed. Let's go and begin at the beginning, before, what happened, and see if there were any telltale signs that Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka, gave the telltale signs of a psycho. She was born Karla Leanne Homolka on May 4th, 1970 in Port Credit, Ontario. Her dad, from Czechoslovakia, a non-existent country today, often got drunk and fought with her mother, while Karla and her two younger siblings comforted each other. Scary stuff as a kid. She took up a part-time job at a pet shop when she was in her teens, and although she claimed to love animals, she once fucked a friend's pet hamster out the window, resulting in its death, which is like strike one on that serial killer, dead giveaway. However, she was a bright pupil, and liked by most of her teachers, though she was bossy with other students. She started reading Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew mysteries at the age of 12, and became obsessed with crime. Yeah, enjoying stories about crime? What a weirdo, am I right? As she grew, she became interested in the occult, and often called spirits with her friends, and was generally nonconformist regarding fashion and didn't give a shit what people thought. She often fantasized about weird situations relating to death, and she wouldn't have to fantasize for very long, unfortunately. She met Paul Bernardo at a convention in Toronto when she was 17 years old. Now let's do him. On the surface, the Bernardos were a perfect, financially well-off family. However, they weren't. In 1975, when Paul was only 9 years old, his father Kenneth was charged with child molestation. Now that didn't bother Paul too much, which is weird. Molestation, schmolestation. However, what did bother him was that when he was 16, Paul's mother told him that he was actually the son of a person she had had an affair with. Oh, you mean I'm not the son of my piece of shit dad? Fuck! After that, Paul's behaviour started to change. He would start to abuse his mother. While studying at the University of Toronto, he would, lure in women, seduce them and then beat the shit out of them, humiliate them. See, his day job was a salesman, and he learned pretty quickly how to use those tactics on people to lure them in. He also studied Bret Easton Ellis's novel American Psycho like a Bible.
Impressive. Very nice.
And he met Karla when she was 17, himself 24. They met in October 1987 and wasted no time. They had sexual intercourse on the first night they met and quickly discovered they had more in common than they initially suspected. Mainly being fucked up. They quickly, embarked on a sadomasochistic relationship in which Paul, he was the abusive master, Karla the willing slave. In May 1987, the suburb of Scarborough, Ontario, was plagued by a series of horrific crimes. In the early hours of the morning of May 4th, 1987, a young woman getting off the bus was grabbed and brutally assaulted near her parents' home. Over the next week alone, there would be two more similar assaults. The women were all between the ages of 15 and 21, and the attacks all included beatings, intense verbal abuse, and dire threats to discourage victims from going to the police. So the investigators quickly realized this was probably the same guy based off the MO. And so, the newspapers began to warn of the Scarborough rapist. Nearly all the attacks happened outdoors. Paul would follow them home, attack them in their own backyard, prowl bus shelters, and one woman was even attacked in her own bedroom. This went on for almost 5 years, during which the Scarborough rapist attacked at least 19 women. Well, 19 is the official number, so... A couple of Paul's victims managed to fight him off, and he was actually questioned by the police twice, but he was never named as an official suspect. It wasn't until May of 1990 that one of his victims was able to give police an accurate description of her attacker. In November 1990, the police decided to question Paul, and he went in voluntarily to the police. He gave his forensic bullshit, whatever, samples, that's the word. And then investigators asked him, why do you think, you're being questioned about these assaults? And he was like, I think I'm being questioned because I kind of look like the suspect. What are the odds? He was released the next day. Paul and Karla became engaged. Outwardly, they were a young, lovely couple, warms my heart. But Paul, if he was a dog, you'd put him down. And he had this very strong urge to have sex with a virgin. Karla wasn't. She'd been with someone else before they got together. And this bothered Karla, because it upset him so much. Paul had a penchant for Karla's younger sister, Tammy, who was 15. He was a complete perv. Kind of wish we could just skip over this part of the story, to be honest. On December 23rd, 1990, Karla administered her little sister with a heavy dose of halothane that she had stolen from the clinic she worked at. Actually, as it turned out, she was stealing large amounts of drugs from her work and gave Paul the drugs to use on the women he attacked. After she used it on Tammy, Paul, they videotaped it. Tammy began to choke on her own vomit. They panicked and tried to hide the evidence before calling an ambulance. Tammy never regained consciousness and was pronounced dead at the hospital. Although the mysterious chemical burn on her face was noted, the drugs in her system were not detected and her death was ruled an accident as the result of choking on vomit from alcohol poisoning. Karla and Paul then placed a photo of themselves inside Tammy's coffin. Three weeks after Tammy's death, Karla and Paul filmed themselves talking about it, titled The Fireside Chat. You can find the transcript of it online. We're moving on. So Tammy's death didn't stop the couple from doing bad shit. It actually did the opposite. From this point onwards, they were a team. Go team. Paul and Karla then moved to a house a few miles from where Tammy died, in Port Dalhousie, hope I pronounced that right, on Lake Ontario. On June 7th, 1991, Karla invited another girl around, this time one she'd worked with at the pet store. This girl was 15. When she did actually wake up the next day, she thought her vomiting was from drinking alcohol for the first time, and she didn't realize she had been sexually assaulted. Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka married on June 29, 1991. The very same day, a horrified couple canoeing in Lake Gibson discovered concrete blocks containing human body parts in the water. The remains belonged to 14-year-old Leslie Mahaffey, who had disappeared on June 15th, 2 weeks before the wedding. Leslie went missing after attending a friend's wake who had passed a week before her disappearance. After the wake, the group went to the woods to drink. Around 2 a.m, friends of Leslie walked her home. She then sent them off, but she found out she was locked out of her own house. She didn't want to wake her mother at first, so she called a friend from a payphone to see if she could sleep there. But no dice. So she decided to walk back home and wake up her mother. She didn't make it home though. Paul had been nearby where the Mahaffey home was located, stealing license plates. He saw Leslie Mahaffey alone. He offered her a cigarette, which he said was at the back of his car. When she was close enough to the car, he wrapped his sweatshirt quickly around her head and forced her into the vehicle and took her home. On June 16th, the day after she went missing, after she had been tortured for 24 hours before being strangled, The couple moved Leslie's body from an upstairs bedroom to the basement. They then entertained the Homolka family on the main floor of the house. After the family left, they dismembered her and, well, the newlyweds were then, under pressure after Leslie's body was found, and Paul started beating the piss out of Karla because he was so frustrated. Fuck him. But as the weeks went by, they were never questioned or arrested, and so they were like, alright, who's next? On the afternoon of April 16th, 1992, they were driving through St. Catharines to look for potential victims. They spotted Kristen French, a 15-year-old student, and abducted her. However, after her parents noticed there was no sign of her and reported her missing, Niagara Regional Police assembled a team and searched the area along her route and found several witnesses who had seen the abduction from different locations, giving the police a fairly clear picture. She was murdered by Ken and Barbie 3 days later, after a horrific 3 days. Her nude body was found in a ditch on April 30th, 45 minutes from where she had disappeared. On the 12th of May 1992, a Niagara Regional Police Sergeant interviewed Paul briefly. The officer decided, hey, it's unlikely it's Paul, so the interview didn't last long, even though at one point Paul admitted he had been, questioned regarding the Scarborough rapist. But this guy was like, Paul, sure it's not you. Get out of here, scamp. The couple actually applied to have their names changed legally, from Bernardo and Homolka to Teal, which Paul had taken from the villain of a 1998 movie, Criminal Law. Although the character in Criminal Law, his name was actually Teal, so I guess that also makes Paul a fucking dumb shit. The movie is supposed to be shite, by the way.
I have an alibi, they're not going to find any evidence.
In December 1992, Paul beat the living shit out of Karla with a flashlight. She went to work the next day. The kitchen cabinet got me again. Or rather, she said she was in a car crash, but when her coworkers noticed her face, they were like, they told her parents, and her parents had to physically drag Karla out of her and Paul's home. She was being rescued. At one point while being rescued, she frantically legged it back into the house looking for something. What she was looking for were videotapes, but she didn't find them. Her parents took her to St. Catharines General Hospital, where her injuries were documented, and she gave a statement to the police, claiming she had been a battered spouse, and filed charges against Paul. He was arrested but later released on his own recognizance. But 2 months later, Toronto police got the DNA results that matched Paul Bernardo to the Scarborough rapist. Karla was then interviewed by police around the same time, confessing a lot, but not everything.
He wasn't loving. He acted like he didn't care that we got married. He told me that he was a Scarborough rapist, and it just was not like the kind of wedding night the girls dreamed about having.
Being physically and verbally abusive to me at that time, as you know. So he went over to her and he did the same thing. He strangled her more. And I think I watched that time. What the hell, she's dead anyway. Like, if I didn't say the right thing, he'd hit me. He held knives to my throat. He told me I better watch my back. I never should have gotten to know Kristen, because you get emotionally involved with these people, and it really hurts. It hurts a lot more, because I felt like I was friends with both of them, especially Kristen, because we did so much stuff together. We put makeup on together. We talked. Just girl talk when Paul was gone getting us food, and it just made it hurt even more.
She obtained a lawyer and began negotiations for a plea bargain in exchange for her testimony against her husband. She claimed Paul had told her he'd assaulted at least 30 women. Paul Bernardo was arrested on numerous charges on the 17th of February 1993, and the police obtained search warrants. Though the warrants were pretty restricted, and police didn't find the tapes. The ones Karla had tried to find. See, she knew the gig was up, and that maybe there might be something on those tapes. She didn't really want people to see, but Paul had hidden them from her. He had a feeling. I don't know if he had a feeling. I don't think he had any feelings, actually. And I don't like putting myself in his perspective, because he's a fucking monster. but I think that's what happened. So, on the 14th of May 1993, the plea agreement between Karla and the Crown was finalised, and she began giving her statements to police investigators. And she decided to play the only card she had left, that of the battered wife, telling investigators that Paul had abused her on a daily basis throughout their marriage. She also claimed that she had been an unwilling accomplice to the murders, that her husband had either forced her or manipulated her the entire time.
Constant beatings. It was hell.
And were these staged in the sense that he told you you're going to look happier because you're going to have a great time, or?
He didn't tell me that, but I knew to smile for a photograph or a video camera. Hiding abuse. Like, I mean, every time we went to my parents, I was totally unhappy because, I mean, on the way there, Paul would be lecturing me. You know, if you say or do anything to make them think that we're not happy, you know, I'm going to kill you, you're going to get it. He had beaten me really badly, and my whole face was black and blue. The police have photographs of it. He used to make me kneel on the floor in the middle of the bedroom and make me stare straight ahead, and he would walk around me in circles and kick me. And I wasn't allowed to look, so I wouldn't know when it was coming.
But then, just when she thought, heh, fooled ya, remember those tapes? Well, they happened to be hidden in the upstairs bathroom of their home, and Paul was like, hey guys, check up there, want to see something?
I've got to return some videotapes.
No one did want to see what was on those tapes, as you can imagine, but people, they had to look. Anyway, Karla was screwed now. I mean, she was screwed, kind of, not really though, unfortunately. See, the Crown's case against Paul depended on Karla's evidence. Quote, in simple terms, to secure a conviction against him, her story had to be believed. By casting her as a victim of his predatory behaviour, her responsibility for the crimes that were committed could be diminished and her credibility as a witness preserved.
The victim was matter-of-fact when she toured police through her Bayview Avenue home where two teenagers were murdered. She had chosen to dress as a schoolgirl. Homolka's response to being back in one of the rooms where Leslie Mahaffey was attacked was to ask police about her furniture.
Can you answer a question for me? Was any of the furniture damaged as a result of the investigation?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, good, so I'm asking for.
And upstairs in the bathroom where they cleansed Kristen French's body of evidence, Homolka inquired after her perfume samples.
But I don't have any of that stuff.
So where are all those articles now?
Where Paul's lawyer took them.
You're saying Paul's lawyer took a number of articles from you?
Well, from what I understand, his lawyer took basically everything. This is where we carried Leslie down the stairs.
And in the basement where Leslie Mahaffey was dismembered, she had yet another inquiry on behalf of her other sister, Lori.
Can I ask you a question?
I'm afraid I can't answer.
Can I have that book? My sister wants it. Or does that have to stay here?
That has to stay for now,
Okay.
but we can make those arrangements.
Okay, thank you. And my Christmas tree.
Now, this pissed everybody off. There was massive public criticism heaped upon the police and Karla, what was said to be the deal with the devil. And it should be criticised because Karla was sentenced to only 12 years with the possibility of parole after 3. What the shit? Paul, meanwhile, was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole for at least 25 years on September 1st, 1995. Now, Paul has always claimed he was not responsible for the murders. He blamed Karla. She killed them all. Come on.
Bernardo raps that he's the solo creep. He makes the girls weep, acting out his crimes while the others sleep. And this is his theory on deadly innocence.
And that's kind of like you're packing deadly innocence rather than a piece, because that's all you need, or that you need that front of the unknown, the art of secrecy or something, the art of deception. Did you ever get caught? No, never. Why? They say. I'm a deadly innocent guy. You ever get caught? Did you ever get caught? Did you ever get caught? No, never, never. Why? I'm a deadly innocent guy. So keep on fronting, man. You fronting and you ride like you tough, man. You ain't been where I've been, man. You ain't seen what I seen. You ain't at where I'm.
See, he would say in his defense, get this, he would say that he never murdered anybody before Karla showed up. Yes, he sexually assaulted people all the time, but not until Karla showed up did he start killing. So Karla's the one to blame, really. Another messed up thing is that Karla wasn't initially charged with her sister Tammy's death. She herself admitted to the crime later in a letter addressed to her parents. And then she was given an extra 2 years added to her sentence for that. Yep, 2 whole years for killing her own sister. And she was actually having a grand old time in prison, a minimum security women's prison. So, after a hard slog in the slammer, she was free to go on July 4th, 2005. Man, the story is infuriating. She actually, moved to Guadalupe and changed her name to Leanne Bordelaise. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. I don't care. Screw her. She married her lawyer's brother, Thierry Bordelaise, with whom she has 2 sons and a daughter. And on top of that, she was eligible to be pardoned in 2010. Now, thankfully, she wasn't pardoned. They changed the laws that would basically stop people from that, being pardoned. Because, she could have had her entire criminal record removed. Background checks would bring up none of this. Thankfully, the Canadian, government changed the law, but that's scary that was even a possibility. Her slate could have been wiped clean. These days, she's living in Quebec. So if you're ever there and you see her, I don't know, flipped a bird or something.
Karla Homolka is one of Canada's most notorious criminals. Along with her then-husband Paul Bernardo, she played a role in the sex killings of 2 schoolgirls and her 15-year-old sister. Since her release from prison, parents have opposed her presence outside schools, including her children's schools. Last year, there was a backlash in Chateauguay, and now she's facing resistance in Montreal's NDG district. Can I talk to you for a second?
No, you can't.
We spoke with Homolka last week. Karla, can I ask you a question? Do you volunteer or work at the school?
Who are you?
You know who I am.
No, I don't know who you are. Who are you?
I'm a news reporter.
Well, good for you. My lawyer will be in contact with you.
Thank you, Karla.
Paul is still in prison. His application for parole in 2018 was denied after only 30 minutes of deliberation.
No can do.
He's up for parole this year too, though it's unlikely he'll get out. Now, he is believed to have committed other crimes, and in 2006 admitted to his lawyer he had committed at least 10 more sexual assaults in the 1980s. Questions have also been raised as to whether Paul was responsible for the June 1990 murder of Elizabeth Bain in Scarborough, 3 weeks after his last known attack in the area. Elizabeth vanished from the Toronto University's Scarborough campus, and although her blood was found in her car, her body was never found. Her boyfriend, Robert Baltovich, spent 8 years in prison for her death before being released. A man resembling Paul was seen nearby the day she vanished. To this date, her remains have never been found. Her boyfriend, Robert Baltovich, was wrongfully convicted of her murder, and his lawyers alleged that Paul Bernardo was behind whatever happened to her. Paul was interviewed about it.
Just a little bit of background about the first time we met back last year in April of 2006. That was in regards to a letter that you had sent through the Attorney General's office and filtered down to my office in regards to some admissions that you made about some sexual assaults that you had committed. I'm here to tell you that I have concluded that investigation and that there have been 2 offenses that I have been able to identify, and with the information that you provided to me at that time was able to conclude those matters as having been committed by yourself. So for that, I thank you for that information.
Sorry, you've identified
the offense. No. I've identified the offense that you were talking about, and based on that information, I was able to conclude those cases that actually provided enough information that I was satisfied that you were the person that committed those offenses.
Okay, now what
Does that
about,
make sense?
Does that make sense? What about ones that you thought that I came forward with and maybe thought that I didn't do it? Was there any of those?
There was none that I thought that you didn't do.
I'm a human being, and to say that I'm a dangerous offender, going to be raping and killing and all this stuff, it's fine. I mean, for publicity, get that, tough on crime, get that bad guy. But when you go to a certain point of line, it's just, I mean, it affects me totally. I made mistakes a long time ago. But don't say that today about me, because then we're lying, and then we got a big problem because I'm looking at you and you're the bad guys. Because I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm telling the truth, and you guys are walking around issuing statements that I lied here, I lied there.
I have some questions that were given to me to ask you in relation to the Balkovich matter, Robert Balkovich matter. Before we do that, I just want to say you understand obviously the importance of telling the truth and the consequences potentially of someone who lies to the police and not telling the truth.
I think we just covered that. Actually, I was referring, you guys tell the truth.
Right. It has been suggested that in the continuing case of the disappearance of Elizabeth Bain and the charge of murder against Robert Balkovich, that you are the alternative suspect, or an alternative suspect. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, great.
Did you kill Elizabeth Bain on June the 19th, 1990?
Well, it's a loaded question. I mean, are we going to go back and go through the time sequence of what happened in my life? I mean, I could just give a yes or no answer, but there's a lot of issues about that.
Did you have anything to do with her disappearance?
No.
Did you know Elizabeth Bain?
Not that I know of.
And that's the story of that one. Yeah, not a nice one. Not a good story. Pretty sickening, the entire thing. Paul and Karla and the shit they got up to. Like, they really deserved each other. They blamed each other for the murders, and I think they're right because they both suck. The sickening thought is that Karla, is out and about nowadays for everything she did after spending just a few years in jail. Paul is thankfully where he should be and where Karla should be too. Hopefully, though, she will be back with him. Hopefully they'll be together in a place they belong where their love, Ken and Barbie's love, was made in hell. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I will see you as always real soon in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Mike out.